Alright, y'all, so today I want to make a very quick video to give you my thoughts on Gamera, Guardian of the Universe, a film that was released in 1995, produced by Daini Film, and weirdly distributed by Toho. So before I get fully into this review, I gotta give you a little bit of context and my history with Gamera. I really don't know a lot about Gamera. I'm going to be honest with y'all. I'm a pretty huge Godzilla fan. I have seen a lot of Godzilla movies, and I know a lot more about the character. Now, I have heard of the character Gamera. I know that, he's kind of a semi-popular kaiju, but I really have never seen any of his movies and barely know anything about the character. So when I went into this movie, I was coming in with a very much fresh experience, fresh background. Didn't really need to know or didn't really have any knowledge of the character beforehand. Now, from what I understand, this is a reboot of the Gamera franchise, the so-called start of the Heisei trilogy of Gamera films. And here's my honest, off-the-top thoughts on it. This is a pretty damn good movie. Honestly, it's a really solid kaiju movie. I don't know if it's like one of the best ever made. I can't really tell you, but for what it's trying to do and what it sets out to do, it executes perfectly. I think this was a really solid, really good movie. And this is coming from someone who doesn't really know anything about Gamera. Now, the basic, I guess you can call it the very much basic outline of this movie, it revolves around a plot where it all starts out with these group of scientists figuring out what the heck this weird rock formation is out in the ocean. And while the scientists are studying that, there's these mysterious disappearances of people. People are getting eaten by what has been described as a giant bird. Through a series of events, we soon find out that these creatures are actually called, and I'm probably butchering this name because there's a lot of Japanese names here, gyros. And these are basically giant creatures that basically want to reproduce asexually, take over the world, eat people, become the dominant life form on the planet. The other creature in this movie, and the protagonist, if you will, Gamera. Now, he was created, and they kind of go into this whole Atlantean, ancient civilization that created this creature called Gamera, these birds called gyros, and Gamera is basically the guardian, the dominant life form on the planet. He was created by an ancient civilization of mankind to defeat threats like the gyros. Hence the name of the movie, Guardian of the Universe. And basically, it's a bunch of scientists, the military, everyone trying to figure out this situation. Of course, like a lot of these monster movies do, there's tons of misunderstandings in the process. At one point, the human military almost kills Gamera, not understanding the fact that he's the one creature that can actually defeat these birds. And ultimately, they eventually get the right idea. There's a big epic showdown at the end of the movie. Gamera wins and, kind of swims off into the ocean. That was probably a very brief outline, but that's kind of like one of the basic gist of this movie. Now, I really enjoy this movie. And I thought that it was really solid. I'm going to go into my pros and cons and go from there. For pros, I really enjoyed the story. I liked following these scientist characters. All the actors themselves do really good performances. And I thought that in general, it just was interesting to unfold the mystery. And I thought it was really cool. I also like this idea of an ancient civilization creating these creatures. It adds a level of intrigue, almost a fantasy element, if you will, to the story. But it makes it really interesting, and it only makes me even more curious if we're ever going to get to see this ancient civilization in the movies. And it's really cool. I really enjoyed the origin story. It basically gives you the basic outline and it makes a lot of sense. I also liked a lot of the scenes where they took parts out of the movie where basically the characters are explaining the monsters and how they work biologically, which I really enjoyed. Sure, I mean, these pseudo scientific explanations for things in movies don't always actually make scientific sense, but that's completely fine. Honestly, I really enjoy the fact that they actually took the time to explain and flesh out everything. It was really cool. Now let's talk about some of the special effects. Now this movie was made in the 90s, so CGI is used here, but very briefly. It is all mostly practical effects. It's suit motion, if you will. You know, guys in suits doing stuff, big model kit cities, all that stuff. This is one of the best movies visually I've ever seen with that style. No doubt. They integrate CGI with like small elements, like missiles are sometimes CGI, or when Gamera kind of goes into his flying turtle mode, if you will, that's aided with CGI. And that's really great filmmaking right there. You know, I think one of the reasons why that's why I love filmmakers that know how to handle CGI instead of just entirely relying upon it, is CGI is a tool to help enhance and make everything more believable. It's not the kind of all in, be in means to accomplish an effect. And this movie completely understands that. It was really great visual effects. It was very convincing. I like a lot of the explosions, the action scenes. This movie's pretty action packed. There's like a couple fights between the gyros and Gamera. There's like a big epic fight at the beginning of the movie, or at the end of the movie, excuse me. And the action was pretty well paced. It kept me very much intrigued. And all the monster designs, from what I saw of the original looks of the creatures from back in the day, because from what I understand, the original Gamera movies were more meant for children. A massive upgrade, right? They look realistic. They look highly detailed. The suits, the designs, I really enjoyed the creatures of this movie. I also like some of the other things they kind of try to do with the story. I already mentioned I like the scientific fantasy origin of everything. And in general, I'm kind of a sucker for monster movies that involve a bunch of characters figuring out a bunch of stuff. There's even a young female character who's like a student in Tokyo, and she gets somehow like psychically linked to Gamera, and that kind of adds to even more of the fantasy element of the movie. And I mean, we've seen this trope in so many other monster movies. I mean, it was in Godzilla, with the character Madison, or Maddie. It was really cool. I don't mind her character. I actually thought the actress, she did a really good performance. Actually, a weird, fun trivia fact, and I could be getting this wrong, but the lady who plays, or the child, I guess, or the teenager who plays the girl who gets psychically linked to Gamera is apparently Steven Seagal's daughter. Wild, weird fact, I know, but that's apparently what I found out. Regardless, to go more into the story of things, I thought that I really enjoyed the story. The only thing I could really say, too, that I enjoyed they did is they added a environmental theme to the overall messaging of the movie. It's mentioned that the gyros were able to so-called hatch in an environment that was more polluted, and basically it's kind of a message against climate change. It's not like, super in your face. It's not like telling you shouldn't do this, because it's not like Captain Planet where it's super, hand-fisted with the message. But it was nice, and I like that theming. I like the environmental themes. It adds an extra dimension of depth to the story, and I think it's just another reason why I really enjoy this movie. And I definitely intend on rewatching it and definitely recommending it to people. In terms of cons, I don't have too many cons with this movie, to be honest with you. The only thing I could really say is I do wish the movie was a little bit longer. It went more in depth with some of the other topics and story elements and ideas. Like, this movie could have been an hour 45 or even 2 hours long, and I think it would have been a 10 out of 10. I think sometimes it kind of quickly moves along. It wants to cut right to the chase, and sometimes leaves out further explanation of things or topics. But, that's just me. But other than that, I really don't have too many other complaints about this movie. It's really good. And this is coming from someone who is not a Gamera fan, who barely knows anything about the character. It's a really good movie, and it has a really interesting and fascinating story. Also, I kind of want to mention this too. It doesn't hurt my enjoyment of the movie at all. I just find it a weird coincidence. This movie has a lot of weird parallels to that canceled 1994 American Godzilla movie, the first attempt by TriStar, and the movie with the Godzilla and the Griffin. That movie also has an ancient civilization that created Godzilla and kind of trapped, and then the creature awakens, and he has to fight a somewhat alien threat. Even though here, the gyros are created by this ancient civilization, it's implied. While in that script, the Godzilla film, the Griffin comes from outer space, it's aliens. But I do find a lot of weird parallels to that story. Now, they're not exactly the same, I would say, but there's some weird story elements that kind of compare. I'm kind of curious if that script somehow winded up on the writer's desk. Probably not. It's just a giant coincidence, but, doesn't hurt my enjoyment of the movie. If anything, it probably actually enhances it, because I also really like that script as well. But just wanted to point it out. But yeah, Gamera, Guardian of the Universe from 1995, the first reboot of the series. Really great movie. It deserves all the praise it gets. Honestly, it's kind of turned me into a Gamera fan, and I can't wait to maybe check out the rest of them, maybe in due time. I'm a huge fan of monster movies anyway, so this movie, if you like Godzilla movies, it's right up your alley. It's really good and really solid. It has a great story, very interesting scientific premise, has a nice environmental theme added on top. The action's really good. The acting's really good. Pacing's a little bit all over the place. Definitely could have been longer. But overall, this movie is really, really solid. But yeah, hope you all have a good day. That's my review of Gamera, Guardian of the Universe. Hope you all have a good day, and peace, y'all.